Hi, everyone. We're going to begin in just a minute. If you are just joining us and haven't done so yet, can you please fill out the survey with the link right here, and my colleagues will be sending it in the chat as well. This is a great survey for us to know who's in attendance, and also we'll be able to send you all of the resources shared today via your email and enter you into a raffle to get yourself an Amazon gift card. So if you don't mind doing so now, I'll get started in just a minute. Okay, I think this is a good place to start. So hi, everybody. I'm Denise Havden. I'm a career engagement educator at the Career Center, specifically the liaison to the School of Engineering. Thank you to all my colleagues who have been presented earlier and who are interacting with you via the chat. If just some housekeeping items, if you have any questions during my presentation, please feel free to submit those through the Q&A portion. And please be on the lookout for the chat feature where my colleagues will be sending some helpful links while I'm talking that you may be interested in accessing. So again, if you have any questions, please enter those into the Q&A and I will get to them. For anything else, use the chat feature where my colleagues will be interacting with you in there as well. So if you've been here all day with both of our previous presentations, hopefully you have reached the step of virtual interviews. Your networking and your job search led you to this moment. And so congratulations. But also if we're preparing for virtual interviews that you may not have expected to come up, this is going to be a really great resource for how to navigate our new landscape now that most of your interviews will most likely be virtual. So thank you for joining us today. First, I want to, why isn't it flipping? There we go. Okay, so the purpose of an interview is a two-way track. So they've already identified that they want you as an applicant. They liked your resume, they liked your cover letter, they think that you are qualified, and the interview is now your opportunity to get to know them and for them to get to know you a little bit more personally. You can decide if this position is for you or not, and learn a little bit more about the organization, the position. It's really an opportunity for both of you. So during an interview, employers seek three main things. The first are content skills. So these are the necessary skills to perform the job, whether you need research experience, data management, do you need to know certain coding languages? These are just the basic literal content skills that you would need. But the second ones are the transferable skills. So you may not have certain content skills, but you have transferable skills that can be applied that it has to do with how you handle the work, whether you're communicating well, you have that empathy or organization that they need in the position. Are you a time manager? Are you detail oriented? Do you work well with a team? Things like that. And then there's those adaptive skills where that has to do with your personality, your temperament. How are you getting along with everyone else? Sometimes if you don't have the content skills, the fact that you have those adaptive skills make it they still see you as a really great candidate because you're able to adapt and learn those content skills while building because of your adaptive skills. Okay, so first I'm going to run a poll. I'd like to know if any of you have had experience with virtual interviewing in the past. So launched. Also, as I'm sure you've all seen, we're all adjusting to a virtual world, so thank you for bearing with me while this is my first virtual webinar, so I appreciate all your grace. Okay, so I'm going to give you about 5 more seconds to submit your answers. All right, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so it looks like most of you have not had virtual interviews. So I'm really glad that you've joined us today to learn some great tips on how to make yourself as ready as you can be. And we are here to help. I want you to know that while the Career Center is closed on campus, we are still virtually available to you throughout any step of the way, including interviews and mock interviews, like my colleagues mentioned previously. Okay, so before the virtual interview, there are a few things that you want to make sure that you have prepared, especially because it's so different than an in-person interview. So first, you want to take personal inventory. Anything that's on your resume is free game. They may ask you about any part of your resume, so you want to make sure that you are ready to discuss any part that you have shared with them. They may ask about anything. Determine how your skills, your values, and your interests fit with this specific position and this organization. I'm a big brainstormer, so I will sit with the job description and kind of make bullets for myself of like, oh, I'm like this too. I'm like this too. To kind of align things together and to show that not only are you qualified, but you're qualified for this role. You're a good fit for this job. So know your strengths and prepare examples and then relate those examples to the job. So I'm sure that many of you have all the strengths in the world, but some might be a little bit more relevant to roles than others. So try and think about the strengths that you will want to share with them when they ask, and think of concrete examples that you can share. We're going to be talking about how to answer your questions. And so when they ask you about your strengths, what are some examples that you're going to use to back that up? Also know your weaknesses. Most of the time they will ask about those too. And the way you answer that question is very telling. I want you to make sure that you are staying positive about yourself, about other people at all times. So yes, we all have our weaknesses, but pick a weakness that you can also show how you're managing it. You want to show that you're solution oriented, that you identify that you're not perfect, but that you are putting other things in place to really move yourself forward, to still be a good contributing member of an organization. So when you are thinking about a weakness, be positive about yourself still. Identify that it's a weakness, but it's something that you're working on. And practice answering questions without memorizing. So this is really important because especially in a virtual interview, they can't tell your physical cues the way they would in person. So you want to be as personable and as natural as can be. And with that comes some practice. And so I want to let you know that we as a career center, first of all, you can practice with us as career engagement educators during an appointment. We can have some mock interviews, but there is also another resource that we have access to, that you have access to for 24/7 practice. And so first I want to ask, have you heard of Interviewstream available through your Handshake account? So I'm going to launch this poll now really quickly. So please let us know if you have heard about Interviewstream before. I tend to find that most students haven't, and it's a really, really great resource that you can utilize. Okay, so let's do about 5 more seconds with that. All right, looks like we've got most people responding. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to close the poll now and share the results. So as expected, majority of you have not heard about Interviewstream. So as my colleagues have mentioned before, and I'll mention again, you have access to your Handshake account, which if you don't know how to access, you can go to our website to access your free Handshake account that you have just by being a UCLA student. And then at the top banner, it's not always super intuitive of how to find it, but where it says Career Center at the top right, that's where you can find appointments to schedule an appointment with a counselor. And then right next to it, there's resources. When you click on that link, it gives you a whole list of resources that I'll go into even more detail about later. But Interviewstream specifically is a really, really great resource. It has thousands of practice questions for you. You can even pick the type of job that you're applying for, and it has pre-curated questions that employers have shown are most likely to be asked during your type of interview. And then you can practice those questions and record yourself. So then you can watch it back and see how you interviewed. I personally, before I realized how important practicing interviewing is, I was very much of a rambler. I was a very long-winded storyteller, and then I would lose my audience before I got to the point. But by practicing, I realized like, oh, I should probably be bringing this up much sooner, and then if I kind of move this around, I'll get to my point much quicker. And so when you're practicing and you're able to see yourself, you can also through Interviewstream share it with somebody else if you want feedback. You can really learn how to hone your interviewing skills. And so now I'm going to continue with tips for the literal interviewing that you can use during Interviewstream. So before your interview, you want to research the organization. Employers consistently tell us that it is very obvious when students have not done their research. You want to learn as much as you can about the organization, more than just what their reputation is, but you want to learn about their values, their mission. Are there current initiatives that you're interested in? What maybe some recent news? Are there new developments or did it kick me out? Is everyone okay? Okay.
I think we had some connectivity issues there, folks, but we're going to get back on track here. Denny,
okay.
you can reshare your screen.
Thank you. Can you let me know at what point you weren't hearing me anymore?
It was this slide. Yeah, you're good.
Okay, great. Thank you all. Sorry, we're all adjusting, right? Thank you for your patience. Okay, that was interesting. Okay, so back to this. So you really want to do your research on an organization. You want to learn about, you want to highlight that you are beyond interested. Let's say it's Facebook. You want to show that you're interested beyond the fact that it's Facebook. Is it that the way they bring people together? Is it that your coding skills are so great? You want to show that you've done the research of the different teams, because you might be applying to something and thinking that you're in a completely different section of a company. So you want to make sure that you show that you're prepared, you're interested, and you are here for a reason. And some great websites that you can look at and for researching these companies are Glassdoor, LinkedIn, and then Vault is another one of those resources that I shared with you that you can find on Handshake in that list of resources. Vault is one of my favorite resources that we have because it really gives you tips into the industry, into the company. You can really delve in deep, and we pay for it so that you don't have to, because we know it's a trusted resource. So, when you're looking on the internet, you don't always know what you can trust. We can tell you that you can trust that resource. And again, utilize your network to get the inside scoop. I know that Kathy was talking about informational interviews, and just fun fact, I got my job right now through an informational interview for a completely different role. But by connecting with somebody, I made such a deep connection that months later, they let me know that this position was open and that I might be interested, and they saw my values align with the role. And so you really then get that inside scoop. And use your network, do that research. Okay, so I hope that this is a very obvious slide that you should always dress for success. Even though it's virtual, they can still see you. So I want you to really think about what you're wearing. I know that you can be wearing pajama pants on the bottom. As long as you are presenting professionally from the waist up and that's all what they can see, that's what you want to attain. You want to show that you are putting your best foot forward. Sometimes there are certain companies that maybe are more casual than others, but I would really suggest that you err on professional side, just to keep things safe and to show that you're really wanting to be present. And again, they can still see you. That's my main point that I want to share. So interview logistics. This looks very different now that things are virtual. You're not going to be thinking about freeway traffic or about how long you need to find parking. Now it's about being flexible and responsive when they are reaching out to you to schedule an interview. Understanding that everyone's schedules might be impacted, or the timing, you may be in completely different time zones. So trying to be responsive so that everyone can get on the same page. Also, clarify what technology you'll be using. what if you, let's say, have been using Zoom because you're part of UCLA, but the interview will be using Skype and you don't have Skype. You want to make sure that you set up a Skype account in advance, that you learn how to use the resource, how to practice with somebody else that you know, try to see what they see, what it looks like. I know that Zoom has virtual backgrounds, so you can hide the fact that I'm in front of my closet right now, but maybe Skype doesn't. I really don't know. So you want to make sure that you are ready for when that call comes in. And that you're ready with a plan B. Like, I had connectivity issues, but my colleagues were there to help out right away. And so try to make sure that you're in touch with them about what they're looking for. Test your technology to ensure that it's ready. And then, like I said, set the scene. So with virtual interviews, it's much more difficult because of distractions. I think that you can all agree with me that it's much more distracting to watch a presentation on your computer or to talk to somebody when you're on your laptop. There's so many other things going on. So you really want to make sure that your background is as not distracting as possible. If you aren't able to use a virtual background, maybe just finding a wall, a plain wall, or hanging a sheet behind you, just to really minimize distractions. Then you also want to minimize distractions of sound around you. So if you're a nervous pen clicker, you don't want to be clicking your pen because you don't realize that the audio picks that up a lot more than it would in person. Or if you are in a noisy space, you want to try and find some time in a quieter space. I mean, I'll share with you that I did have a video interview before in like a small portion of a hallway with a TV tray, just because that was the background that could fit at the time when I was living. And then you can sit down for your virtual interview prepared. So if you have questions that you want to ask them, have them next to you. Have your water next to you in case you need anything, a tissue, details like that. But also, if there are certain things that you don't want to forget to mention, I know that I sometimes blank, but I'm like, oh, I really want to mention this one word. Write that down. You just want to make sure you're not reading. You want it to be natural. Okay, are there any questions based on what I shared so far? I just want to make sure that we're all on board, everyone's good. I know that we had some connectivity issues. Okay, so it looks like we don't have any questions, so I'll move forward. So during the virtual interview, first impressions are still really important. So nonverbal communication is just as important as your verbal communication. I'm a talker with my hands, as I'm sure you've noticed, but I have been trying to keep them at my waist because it's less distracting than flailing my hands all around. I know that I can improve as well. It just comes with practice. Make eye contact with the camera as much as you can so that they feel like you're talking to them. Greet the interviewer with your name. I know that typically when you would get to meet them, you would shake their hand and we would give you a whole course on how to shake their hand to make a good impression. But now that you're not able to, make sure that you're introducing your name. I know that my name, for example, it's written there and it says Denise Hampton, but you may not know how to pronounce my name. So for me to introduce myself, that kind of alleviates that awkwardness. And it shows that you're here, you're ready, and that's my name. Monitor your body language, be polite and courteous. We typically say memorize your interviewer's name, or I personally am horrible with remembering names, so I write them down. But also you can, because their names are there, you can use that to your advantage for sure. And like I mentioned before, and this is a theme that's going to continue, honestly, it's to stay positive and be confident. If you feel positive about yourself, they will too. If you feel negative about yourself, they will too. So when you're answering questions, I want you to listen carefully to what the interview is asking and ask for clarification if you need it. It's totally okay to double check, is this what you meant or is this what you're looking for? They would rather you ask for clarification than not answer the question that they're asking. Definitely stay honest and genuine in your responses. And again, don't memorize your answers. Don't be afraid of silence too. Sometimes there are questions that stump you that you weren't prepared for. I personally am known for wow, that's a really good question, thank you. And then I take a second and I try to figure out what I'm gonna say. But in preparing, which we'll cover a little bit more, it'll help with alleviating that silence and those tricky times. And again, don't speak negatively about yourself or about others. So most common questions that come up, most interviews will start off with, tell me about yourself. I don't want to get too into the nitty gritty of what it says, but I do want to cover that when they ask you to tell you about yourself, it can be an intimidating moment of like, oh, well, I mean, I have 26 years of life. How much of it do you want to know? So that's where I really encourage you to practice about telling about yourself. You want to identify what makes you you, whether it's your philosophical approach, your values, your motivations. Why are you here? What kind of led you to be at this interview? Focus more on those areas. Think about your major achievements, your skills, your strengths, things that are unique to you. Try to make it memorable if you can, if you have a fun story. And then establish a connection. Tie it back to the organization. Demonstrate your excitement for this role. So what I really like about the tell me about yourself on the right side that you can see right here is that Bella Bruin introduces herself as a junior at UCLA, majoring in psychology. She then goes into explaining why she's interested in HR specifically, and then gives a little narrative about how she grew up playing strategy RPGs, the development of unique characters and all of that, and she continues to tie it into the role that she's applying for. So when we share this resource with you, you can kind of take a deeper look. I know that virtually I don't want to lose you at this moment, but just know that like think about yourself, and it should be about a minute to two. You don't want to run too long. Typically, we would say that an elevator pitch should be about 30 seconds or longer, but try to keep it short so that you can get to the other questions as well. You don't want to ramble too much. And then the question of why are you interested in our organization? Like I mentioned before, go beyond the superficial. I want to know, demonstrate that it's a good fit. Emphasize your skills, your interests, and relate them to that specific role. Demonstrate your knowledge about the organization and the industry. With this one, I do kind of want to read it just because I think that this is a trickier one for students to answer sometimes. So I will read that Bella Bruin is the youngest of 5 and 4 adopted siblings, all with various physical and cognitive disabilities. Growing up, I've seen the difficulties they've experienced across virtually every area of life. I'm interested in working at your team at Make-A-Wish because I know firsthand that the work your organization does to change lives and gives hope and representation to people who need it. I'm most excited about this opportunity because I'll be able to continue working directly with members of this population. I am well equipped to answer their needs and address their concerns and make sure they receive the quality of support they would expect from a Make-A-Wish team member. So this very well ties in not just Bella Bruin, but also the organization. That's how you show that you are a good fit for both. Tie both of them together. Next, tell me your greatest strength and weakness. This question can be tricky for students, and oftentimes they're presented as 2 separate questions. So when it comes to strengths, I really want to encourage you to think about at least 3. And when it comes to weaknesses, I want you to think about one that you, like I mentioned before, are working on. You want to have that positive spin. Pick a genuine area that you can improve and demonstrate how you've improved in it. And then with your strength, think about something that's unique. Think about the way you work with others, the way you make decisions, how you excel in your work, and relate it to the job. So like I mentioned again, there are strengths that, I mean, you can be a great artist. In certain roles, that's a really great strength to have. And in others, it may not be as relevant. So think about the audience. So I want to just share with you that behavioral interview questions are typically different than those of you who may have technical interviews, case interviews. Those are a whole other kind. So these are more for technical interviews, for behavioral interviews. So these are about questions about how you behaved in the past that will tell the employer about how you might behave in the future. So it's very telling about the way you handle things. So sometimes you might not have that exact experience that they're looking for when they ask you a question, but you might have a student org related answer, or a way that you've used those transferable skills that can still show how you can behave in the future of their organization. Try to avoid rambling, going on tangents, or not answering the question. I think the hardest thing for employers to watch is when a student takes so long, but they didn't actually answer the question. So really try to listen to it. Be specific, but concise. So before we go into how, I just want to show you a couple more examples of some questions that you may get. So tell me about how you prioritize working on multiple projects. Tell me about how you work effectively under pressure. Tell me about a time you were on a team and a team member wasn't pulling their weight. Again, the way you answer this question will be telling about yourself in your skills, but also in your attitude and the way you go about things. Prepare your stories. So for when they stump you, or even for when they don't, you want to take an inventory of what are some stories that you want to share. Because when you're answering questions, you definitely want to be specific. You want to show examples. You don't just want to say that you're a good writer, but show me you're a good writer. Tell me about how you've worked in a newspaper, how you've been published, or how you help edit research papers. Give concrete examples. You could look at your leadership, at your teamwork collaboration, your conflict resolution, because those might come up, your time management, adaptability, motivation, your communication style. Just think about some stories that you might want to share and try to make them as relevant as you can to the role, but also be prepared with some stories that might not be related if you need to kind of use those as a crutch. So when it comes to how to answer those questions, we really highlight the CAR method. The CAR method will allow you to formulate a thorough and concise response that will fully address their question, and make sure that you are staying relevant to the position that you are interviewing for. So the first step in the CAR method is context. I want you to set the scene. Describe the event or situation that they asked you about. So let's say it's the question about the team member. So tell me about, it's a group project that we worked on for class. We were a group of 5 and about 3 weren't pulling their weight. Set the stage a little bit. What was the goal or challenge? Who was involved? Then the action. Describe the actions that you took to address the situation and the rationale behind them. Articulate your decision-making process. So you felt like you were doing too much work, and so you chose to talk to your team members and to really try to evaluate where they're coming from and how to weigh each other's strengths. Maybe they were assigned to a part that wasn't their strength and is yours, and so maybe you could switch positions. Whatever action you may have taken. Then share the results. What did you accomplish? And if it was not successful, which is also okay, what did you learn? So let's say the switch was successful, and because you had those open communication lines, you were able to then move forward with the project, where had you not asked the student, you may not have ever known that they were actually having a difficult time and that their coping was to not do it at all. And then tie it back to the position, relate it back. And so say that in this future role, when I'm working with a team member, I've learned to communicate with my team effectively to move forward as a unit instead of harboring resentment and being more solution focused instead of problem oriented. So you indicated in your cover letter that leadership is one of your strengths. Please describe an experience in which you used your leadership abilities. So this is a question that you might get, and this is an example of how you can answer it using the CAR method. So C, context. During my 3rd year of college, I was elected vice president for professional programs for my student association. The duties of the position included securing speakers for our meetings, advertising the programs to the campus community, introducing speakers, and evaluating each program. Previous attendance at meetings had decreased substantially due to a decrease in the overall student population. The goal was to implement programs to address the professional development of our association and increase attendance by 25% compared to the prior year's figures. Action. I assembled a team to help with the program design and the speaker selection, and also developed a mandatory survey to determine the members' professional interests and ideas for possible speakers and topics. Then we randomly selected members for a focus group interview. I had learned about this research technique in my marketing class and thought it would help identify why attendance had dropped. Now the results. Because of the information we gathered from the surveys and interviews, we selected speakers for the entire year, produced a brochure describing each program and the featured speaker. Under my leadership, attendance increased 150% over the previous year. And now relating it back to the position, as a leader, to the question, as a leader, I not only take initiative, but understand the importance of empowering my team to reach our goal together. True leaders recognize their own limitations and are not afraid to lean on the strengths of their team. So at the end of the interview, they may ask, do you have any questions for us? I want you to make sure that you always have questions prepared. You should not say no. You should always have some sort of question to ask. It is a two-way street, so you're learning about them as much as they're learning about you. Have about 2 to 5 thoughtful questions, open-ended ones that are not related to salary or personal issues, uninformed questions. You want to make sure that they're really thought out. And this might be a good opportunity for you to also respond to certain things in the interview if you didn't touch on certain parts that the interviewer was maybe looking for. So for example, a question that I like to ask is, what are you looking for in a candidate for this position? And then they will kind of let you know what are the main things that they're looking for. And you can then in response, highlight those, how you completely agree or how you see that part in yourself as well. This is another opportunity to showcase yourself and to learn more about them. So you can ask about the culture of the organization. What team would you be working for? How would you describe the organization's style of management? Some folks like to work on their own. Some work well in teams. Some have direct supervisors. Some never see their supervisors. You want to learn what might be the best fit for you. Are there any questions at this point? I just want to make sure we're all good. Okay, I don't see anything coming through. Okay, so for after the virtual interview, evaluate the process. How did it go? How are you feeling about it? Were there any questions that stumped you? Write them down because that could help you with preparing for future interviews. Reflect on how you can improve, and then you can definitely come back and see a career engagement educator and set up an appointment with us. I had a student, I just found out the other day that they got an interview, a first interview, and it didn't go very well. So then they made an appointment with me and we did mock interviewing about once or twice. And then they had their interview and they did receive this internship. They had the content, they just were a little rough around the edges and needed a little bit more practice. And so we are here for you to help if you ever need it. Send a thank you note. I can't emphasize how important this is. Sometimes employers might be looking between two candidates, and it could be that the candidate who sent the thank you note, it was just that one thing that differentiated you from another candidate. You want these notes to be personal. Send them within 24 hours. It used to be about writing them down, but now email is just fine, especially in our new virtual landscape. You want to make sure that to thank them for their time, maybe bring up certain details. If you were interviewing with multiple people, I would recommend writing a separate thank you note for each and maybe adding a different detail in each one. You want to make sure it's not the same copy pasted email. Sometimes they do compare. I've watched it. And so mention interesting talking points, highlight your strengths. It's your ability, it's your time to say one last thing if you didn't get to say it. And again, thank them for their time and let them know how they can reach you to follow up. And like I said, practice, practice, practice. Even if you didn't get your first one, you can get your second one. And sometimes practicing is the main difference. So Interviewstream is a great resource, and that's why I wanted to share it early on, because this is a tool that is available to you 24/7. While you are a student at UCLA, you have free access, and then even after you graduate, you will have access for a full year. So you'll have access to appointments for a full quarter after you graduate. So even if you can't make a mock interview, you can definitely still use Interviewstream. Again, watch your practice interviews, and then if you want, you can schedule an appointment with us as well. So the main reason we want to share this with you is because employers are adapting right now. Our landscape is different than it was before, and these are some surveys from employers themselves that Handshake collected that show that 89% of employers are adopting or increasing their virtual interviews. So that's why we wanted to make sure that you're prepared, because it is a lot more likely now that you will have a virtual interview. Employers are also increasing phone screens. So you may be talking on the phone more than you are used to. So these same tools apply throughout. It's about communicating yourself when you're not able to physically show yourself. And then, of course, they are engaging digitally a lot more. And you are most likely to have employers look at your Handshake profile if you update your profile and you indicate the job type, job role, and your location preferences. Those three simple things can really make a difference. And Handshake has reported to us that they got more traffic through employer communication to students in the last month than they did all of last year, in the last 2 months, I think. Than all of last year. So they are utilizing these digital platforms. And so we want to make sure that you're ready, that you're thinking about it, because they are still looking for you and you can make yourself accessible to them. Some 6 tips from the Career Center. So again, Handshake is such a great tool. There are thousands of positions that are being posted. I think the last time I checked, there were 3,000 internships and 10,000 full-time positions on Handshake, including virtual options. We have altered our policies and now are allowing virtual internships. So you can see a lot more opportunities that may not have been there before. So please look at Handshake, keep an eye on it. Employers are still figuring themselves out, but they are still posting. LinkedIn and UCLA One are a really great way to focus on your online presence, on your digital profiles, making connections. Now that we are all home, unfortunately, we do have to use other ways to connect. And so now is a good time to reach out to some folks, build your networks, have those informational interviews. Candor is a really great resource to learn about the latest hiring freezes, information about companies, things like that, so that you can know how to manage your expectations and maybe look at other options. Be prepared. So because of our digital world now, you might connect with someone and then they ask for your resume and cover letter right there and then, and you want to make sure that you're able to respond and give them that material, because that could move very quickly. So make sure that you're practicing, that you're prepared. That's being as proactive as you can be. Develop concrete and transferable skills. This could be a good time to work on those interpersonal and communication skills. Now that you are being in a digital world, you can work on how well you respond to emails or to messages on LinkedIn. There are also free access LinkedIn learning videos that you can learn and prepare even more. And I think most importantly, be agile. Know that we are all going through this together and it's affecting folks in different ways. And that includes employers who are hiring and recruiters. So be flexible, be patient, be adaptable, and compassionate to the fact that their lives are changing right now too, and that it might take a little bit for them to fully know where they stand. So I think that if we all can just be a little more compassionate and understanding, and stay optimistic. This is temporary, and you got this. So just to let you know, the UCLA Career Center does still offer virtual services. Almost all of our services are still available. The only thing that's changed is the way we give them. So our career advising, you could still make appointments on Handshake. Again, like I said, through your Handshake profile. At the top, you'll see Career Center. When you press that, you can click appointments and find availability. We have been posting more availability than we have before. So if you previously weren't able to make an appointment at the Career Center, we have a lot of availability now. So please find us there. Virtual drop-ins, the link is available on our website if you're interested. Events and workshops like this, we are still offering, so keep your eye out on Handshake. We will be updating with upcoming May and June programming shortly as well. Employer info sessions. Employers are also trying to figure out how they can connect with you at this time. And so we have virtual employer info sessions that are still on Handshake, so keep an eye out. If you're trying to figure out who is still hiring, they are most likely are if they are having virtual info sessions right now. So keep your eye out on those. They are constantly updated, new opportunities at all times. And then interviews, we are still holding interviews just virtually, and articles and digital resources, we are updating and constantly including on our new website. There you can find an FAQ page. We are linking to resources that might help you. So again, this is just a list of resources. I see that we are dwindling down, so I just want to make sure that we leave room for you all to ask questions. But we will be sending you the slides so that you can look at these resources and you have access to all of them via Handshake. So I just want to leave what time is left for our Q&A portion. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. It doesn't have to be just about interviewing. We do have quite a few career engagement educators available if you have any questions. I can't see the chat for some reason. It went away. So I hope everyone's fine. I want to wish you all a good evening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and let us know if we can help in any way. And again, fill out that survey so that we can share our resources with you and enter you into a raffle for an Amazon gift card. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you sticking it through with us. Have a good one.
Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. We hope to see you again soon. If you haven't filled out that survey,